have some further thoughts on Philippians 4, Philippians 4:8, which I discussed in a recent post in regards to secular music and attending the Rush concert. Today at church, the pastor did what I reason for the most part was a very good sermon in regard to avoiding sexual sin and lust. He dealt with Matthew 5 and how we're to avoid sexual sin and lust through what Matthew 5 and Jesus prescribes. Then he very correctly tied the concept into 1 Corinthians 7, as I have done online with more than one post, and that a person should have a healthy sex life through marriage. He didn't get into the issue which I deal with, that there's few biblical Christians out there, so it's more difficult to find someone to get married to or stay married within a biblical context. However, he then started talking about Game of Thrones and compared watching a show like Game of Thrones to dabbling with sexual sin. And of course, Game of Thrones does have a lot of negatives, and it features gods, and it doesn't feature in its fictional context a God that redeems humanity, as does the biblical God of the Hebrew Bible and the New Testament triune God. So it is a severe negative because it doesn't have the redemptive qualities of the gospel. However, the part of verse 4:8 he used, chapter 4, verse 8, finally, brethren, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is right, whatever is pure. He just read the first part as if Christians are concentrate on whatever is right and whatever is pure. And I agree with that, but he just stopped there. And if you just stop there, people will get the impression, well, I'm just supposed to concentrate on whatever is right and pure, and that means not Game of Thrones because that's not pure, or not this non-Christian thing because that's not pure. But if we continue reading on with the verse, finally, brethren, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is of good repute, if there is any excellence and if anything worthy of praise, let your mind dwell on these things. So now we get a different perspective by reading the second part of verse 8. It's saying, if there is any excellence and anything worthy of praise, let your mind dwell on these things. So sexual sin, a person can't dwell on, if they're struggling with lust, the beauty of a woman, so they have to avoid looking at that woman because they lust. However, someone can watch a program like Game of Thrones for, if there is any excellence or if anything worthy of praise, let your mind dwell on these things. It's possible for someone to watch Game of Thrones and dwell on the artistic merit. Now, he was saying that there's all kinds of sexual sins that go on in the show. When I watch the show, and I haven't watched all the episodes, I don't struggle with sexual sin because of Game of Thrones. Now, if he does, and others do, they shouldn't watch the show. And I had this discussion with someone in the church after, and he basically agreed with me that if for the pastor Game of Thrones would be a sexual struggle, and for others they should avoid the show. But it's a little misleading just to state from chapter 4 verse 8 that we're supposed to concentrate on whatever is honorable, whatever is right, whatever is pure and lovely, and then not mention if there is any excellence and anything worthy of praise. Also, I've had to study atheistic authors for my doctorate and MPhil. They're certainly not pure. They're against the gospel. They're certainly not right. Verse says whatever is honorable, whatever is right, whatever is pure. If we just go that part of 4:8, well, then we can't study atheistic authors. So I think we have to be careful. But if we look at, if there is any excellence and anything worthy of praise, let your mind dwell on these things. So I can dwell on positive critiques, true critiques of Christianity or evangelical Christianity that atheists may have. So that changes the whole perspective differently by reading the entire verse, but the pastor just read the first part. And just to quote a commentary, Ralph P. Martin on Philippians. The use of ethics lists was a feature of Stoic religion, and the list of vices and virtues are also found in the Book of Wisdom and in Philo. He also goes further on to say, rather than prolong the list of desirable qualities which should grace the lives of the Philippians, the apostle seems to sum up the virtues which might be included in the words of, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy. And he goes on to say, the word can signify both excellence in any sphere of activity and the prestige which such excellence requires. Praiseworthy, epenos in the Greek, may be constructed as either what deserves your praise or anything which calls down the approval of God, from Romans 2:9. In this context, where Paul is employing a list of virtues which represent the best of the contemporary religious world, so it's the best of the contemporary religious world. So we shouldn't take chapter 4, verse 8 and kind of fundamentalize that and say, well, just watch Christian shows, listen to Christian music. And it doesn't really work necessarily for not watching Game of Thrones. And especially as seen in the noble types of Roman character. The first meaning is more likely. He further goes on to say the term praise is here used as its classical sense of universal human approval. Whatever is generally deemed worthy of praise, and this would appeal to the civic consciousness of his readers, Paul's readers, who were living in the outposts of Roman culture and to whom later in the chapter 4:15 he gives their official Roman name. So I see it as a list, as Martin has stated. Yes, Christians should concentrate on whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, and that would be things of the gospel. But because it allows for whatever is of good repute, if there is any excellence, and if anything worthy of praise, let your mind dwell on these things. That means that there could be non-gospel things such as a movie, a show, secular music, even Game of Thrones with all its negatives, which someone could dwell on these things. A lot of it depends on the effect it has on the person.